Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, two blokes chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
.7 The Pulse. It's 28 minutes past 10 o'clock. You are listening to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show. My name's Neil Butler. His name, he said, pointing, is Rob Cameron. But the other person that we've got joining us today is Ros Spence, MP. She is the Minister for several things, including Multicultural Affairs, Youth. But we are talking about community sport. Good morning to you, Minister.
Good morning.
Welcome to our little humble radio show here in Geelong. Great to have you on board.
Thank you for inviting me on for a chat.
Ros, this conversation was prompted by a media release from your office around community sports grants, which is really good. Grants are very much in the news of late, and we're excited because this particular region is very much runs on community sport, and it's obviously a difficult time at the moment with none of that happening, but these sorts of grant opportunities are really, really timely. Has the decision taken from your office or the cabinet just a bit of an injection of enthusiasm in these low times?
Well, the decision for these grants has come about because of, yes, the crisis, but it's also because since being sworn in as the Minister 10 weeks ago, the first thing I did was get my skates on and get about and talk to the stakeholders in the sector, and that meant for the ongoing response, so the infrastructure's there so that we can respond, but also, really importantly, the survival for clubs and leagues and associations through that cash injection. And I'm happy to talk more to both of those packages if you like.
Yeah, one of them is very interesting. We live in a region here which federally has a very safe seat and a very marginal seat, and a lot of funding for sport has come into the region, but it hasn't always necessarily gone exactly where it's needed. With these particular grants, are you able to sit back outside of clubs or organisations applying, but actually target funding, or is that not really the purpose?
Well, both of the packages are, well, they're quite different. One's infrastructure and one is operation and club. So perhaps if we look at them both separately. So the infrastructure one, when we have a look at that one's going to look at $68 million for infrastructure, and that's going to fast-track the building of shovel-ready community sports infrastructure. So that'll put in things like local stadiums, aquatic centres, pavilions and the like. And the guidelines within that says that local government authorities can apply, and projects will be of value from $1 million to $10 million, and priority will go to projects in areas that have low socio-economic areas and high population growth. So that's putting in infrastructure where there is a high demand for it. So that's a real plus. Then if we have a look at the survival boost, the funding boost one, the $40 million, that's going across the board. So state sporting associations, regional sports assemblies and the like, getting the operational support, that's spread across the state. So that's not going to matter whether you're a safe seat or a marginal seat, that's across the board. Associations and leagues up to $15,000 the same, and grants of $1,000 for all clubs. Now that doesn't matter where your club is, all clubs. And I wouldn't mind making the point to all of your listeners, if they're involved in a club, whether they be a member or they know someone who's a member, I'd really encourage them to get online and apply for that $1,000 grant. It shouldn't take more than about 15 minutes to apply. The applications are being assessed and processed pretty quickly, so the funds can be dispersed fairly quickly, and that means that things like the hand sanitizer for players and volunteers, or disinfectant for equipment that might be needed to get players back to training, can be purchased quickly, or a bill can be paid, and that's just a little bit less stress for a club that can be relieved. So the the financial relief through the $40 million COVID response package, that survival package for basic running costs and support for that readiness to return to play, that's across the board.
And a very catchy title too, the Victorian Community Sports Sector Short-Term Survival Package. I was talking to one of your advisors during the week when we were organising this conversation. By the way, it's Neil here. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. It seems that it's not only being that applications are here, they're being turned around really quickly as well, is the other thing that I understand. So if you're thinking, oh yes, it'll go into someone's inbox somewhere and in 6 months' time we'll get our $1,000, I understand it's being turned around pretty quickly at the moment.
Absolutely. There's no point having a survival package if you're waiting months to get it. That's the intention of the $1,000 for clubs. Obviously, when we're talking about the higher amounts for the state sporting associations, where it's up to $350,000 for the larger associations and $200,000 for the smaller state sporting associations, they're going to take a little bit longer. Not a great deal longer. Only, I think they're only in July. So a slightly longer process because that's a larger amount of money and there's a more stringent criteria for assessment. But the $1,000 for clubs, very fast.
And that's as long as it's a purpose project rather than just money into consolidated revenue. But you mentioned a couple of opportunities with sanitizer and things like that, which do have a genuine purpose for that $1,000. So as long as that's the target of a club's needs, then by all means get on quickly and get your applications in. It's
your basic running costs. It's to support getting players back out to train, making sure that your volunteers have got the hygiene requirements so that they're right to get that back to play, back to train, sorted out. The associations and leagues up to $15,000. Again, that's not going to take very long to get that money out either. This is a survival package. This is a quick money out the door package. So I really do encourage clubs to get in. It's only open for a short amount of time also. So sports.vic.gov.au, there's lots of information on there, including the application, and it is a very, very easy and fast one to do.
And there's one specific for the grants and funding. We'll put that URL on our webpage, on our Facebook page, so that people can go to that. Because I think the other thing too, we like to think of this from a community perspective. $1,000 is selling 500 sausages or 500 cans in the canteen, which are things that people can't do at the moment. That's normally, those sort of revenue streams have been cut off, haven't they? So not only is there a higher expectation of being able to get things like sanitizer, disinfect, all those sort of things, not only is there more cost, presumably, there's also less opportunity to pull that revenue back, so it becomes really important.
Well, that's right. There's clubs at the moment, some expenses are still needing to be paid, revenue's not coming in. There's also a number of clubs that really often don't get opportunities to raise those funds. The smaller clubs, the sports that we often don't think of, they often don't get those opportunities. So this is spreading it across the board a bit more evenly as well.
We just want to get back to the other bigger grants too, Ros, because I'll give you a circumstance that a well-organised club with a very clever grant writer could probably put in a glossy application for an extension to a gymnasium, but another club that hasn't got that skill on the task force might find it difficult to put in a grant for a gymnasium that they don't even have. Is the on the ground local member come into play to identify need as opposed to want for this funding?
For the infrastructure funding, this funding package is open to local government authorities and alpine resort boards, given that it is it's a fairly quick package because it is for shovel-ready projects, so they need to commence within 6 months of the agreement. So it's a fairly fast one, so it's been limited to applications coming in from local government authorities. So it's not a broad application process where clubs would be able to apply for infrastructure.
Oh, that's good because
go through local government.
Yeah, linked with the local council and local council member as well as local parliamentarian, it adds a lot of weight to it. So that gives me a lot of confidence that the funds are going to get where they're needed. So that's good news.
And one of the things I like, at the bottom of the media release, there are some quotes that are attributed to you, and the one I like most out of that is it says, "We will back projects that have the support of their community, will create jobs and provide real benefits." I think there's a lot of people who see government grants often, there's no sort of rhyme nor reason to how they're given out to people in the street quite often. I really like that there are three very clear criteria there, isn't there? Support of the community, create jobs, provide real benefits. It's really easy to measure, I would have thought.
Correct. That's right. And if people are interested, if you do go to the sport.vic.gov.au website, the guidelines are on that website. It's only a relatively short document, but it does go through what the priorities are for assessing these grants. And it's, as I say, it's not a large document, and it does spell out how these grants will be assessed.
Ros, on a personal level, probably not spending as much time at Spring Street as normal, but I'm tipping your life has probably not been a bludge of late. How are you coping with the pressures of trying to lead Victoria through this horrible situation?
Look, I'm a little bit sick of my lounge room, but every time I start to feel a little bit sorry for myself in being sick of my lounge room, I kick myself a bit and say, pull your socks up. There's plenty of people that are sick of their lounge room because they don't actually have a job and they're stuck in it at the moment. So be a little bit realistic and don't feel sorry for yourself. There's people that are in terrible circumstances. I'm incredibly fortunate to have this job. It really is an honour and a privilege, and perhaps even more so to do this job in what is an incredibly challenging circumstance. So I look forward to seeing a lot more activity going on out in our suburbs. But, it really is a terrific job. It will be much better when I'm doing more of it outdoors, but for now, we make do and be grateful for our circumstances.
Better to be sick of your lounge room than sick, I would have thought.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ros, the other thing that's interesting about the organisation, it's obvious that not all of you agree with the path that you've chosen, but the state government appears to be united outside as to what you're trying to do, and that's made things for Victorians, I think, whether they agree with it or not, at least it's been consistent and united, the message that's coming.
Absolutely. I think that the government has done an outstanding job, and what's even better is that the Victorian community has done an absolutely outstanding job, and I would really like to take the opportunity, Neil, to thank everyone, all of your listeners, for the role that they've played in observing the directions that we've all had to live under for the past few months. If everyone has played a role by following these directions, and in doing so, we've been able to flatten the curve, as we've all heard over and over again, and ease the spread of this virus. And in doing so, the restrictions have been eased, and we've been able to see that bit more activity outside, and we've been able to see this return to play. And thank you to everyone for the role that they've played in us being able to do that.
Because I reckon I'm not a great follower of politics or government activities. I sort of sit back and watch that all go on. I reckon anecdotally, people have become significantly more comfortable with the role of governments at both state and federal level during this, whether you agree necessarily with the policies or you're voting for one side or the other, because in the case of Victoria, one side or the other are represented at federal and state. I just think that because everyone has been pulled together into a united front, a lot of that sort of name-calling stuff that we see in the papers hasn't happened. And I'm wondering whether that's actually going to have a positive impact on the way people see government activity over the next year, 2, 3, 5, 10.
I hope so. I hope that's the case. I think that when we've seen the absolutely devastating scenes around the world, I think that Australians and Victorians are immensely grateful that we haven't seen that happen here, and collectively people have been prepared to do things that we otherwise would not have been prepared to do. But we have all gone above and beyond to avoid that kind of horror. Nobody has wanted to see that devastation here, and we've done an outstanding job to avoid that.
Ros, thank you very much for the time. I noticed on your little brief here you do cover a few portfolios, so it may be that we speak to you again in another format. We have another show on a Thursday which does have a little bit more social and political lean than our sporting show on Saturday, but we appreciate you explaining these grants. They are fantastic, and each and every club or association or competition around here has a chance to tap into that and utilise those extremely beneficial funds that are available. So thank you for making them available, and hopefully the package rolls out smoothly.
More than happy to talk to you. Thanks for your time.
Good on you, Ros. Ros Spence, Minister for Community Sport, Multicultural Affairs, Youth and a few other things. And
What do you do in your spare time?
I've got no idea. Well, spends a lot of time in the lounge room, we have found out.